A New Menace by Roger A. Price. Read by Mark Struthers. Chapter 1. John Burroughs guessed the next couple of hours would be mundane, tedious even. He was used to CMEs, or covert method of entries, as they were officially called, from his days in the Serious and Organised Crime Agency. And although he had retired from the cops before it became the National Crime Agency, he guessed nothing much would have changed. In truth, he didn't really know what he was doing here, sat in the back of an observation van with a rookie. Even though his boss, Frank Briers, had said Burroughs' secondment here was at the NCA's request, due to his recent knowledge of their target, the fact that he'd been put in the back of a van with a rookie said it all. "I've never done one of these sorts of jobs before. Do they usually pass off okay?" the rookie asked. "Usually," Burroughs answered, resisting the temptation to check his watch, yet again. "Whilst the surveillance team keep a watch on our target, as he is stuffing his fat face in the restaurant, the CME team will approach his flat, via the rear, and we'll keep the front covered, just in case an old girlfriend with a key, or whoever, arrives unexpectedly." "How many are in the CME team?" Burroughs sighed before answering. This guy really was a rookie, he thought. He'd said his name was Brian, a man in his 20s who'd not been with the agency long. He seemed a nice enough guy, and Burroughs knew he shouldn't sigh. He felt a twinge of guilt. Everyone had been a rookie once. "Depends on what the recce showed up the other night. But I'm guessing in this case, there would be a couple of guys to keep the dog happy, a couple of guys to plant the listening devices, and the civilian technician to get them past the locks. That's the tricky bit, getting in quickly and switching off the alarm." "How good are the technicians?" "They're usually pretty good. Recce's and intelligence gathered previously gives them all they need to know about the locks and alarms, and then they practice with copies for days, before the actual job." "Must be a bit different, though, doing it for real." "Yeah, that's when the real pressure is on." Burroughs looked at his watch once more. It was 10:45 p.m, and the autumn rain that had been predicted arrived. It always wound him up how the weather forecasts were spot on when it was bad news, and intermittent at best when it was supposed to be fine. Though he'd forgive them tonight. Rain was good cover on jobs like this, though it did make it more difficult peering through the viewing ports in the side of the van. They were parked on a quiet residential avenue, with grass-fronted pavements bordering Victorian townhouses with high inverted V-painted weatherboards, each painted a different pastel colour. It gave the place a real coastal resort feel, which of course is what it was. The street lighting was poor, but fortunately there was one lamppost right outside the target address. He noted it had been 5 minutes since the CME team, using the call sign Tango 1, had announced they were approaching the rear of the premises, and he wondered how they were getting on. "What sort of lock is it on the back door?" the rookie asked. "As far as I'm aware, it's just a standard 5-lever mortise. After all, this is just a rented flat the target uses from time to time for his meetings with the rest of his gang. It's not like his home address back in Manchester, which will be like Fort Knox." "More like his weekend Southport retreat, eh?" "I guess you could call it that." As if the surveillance team leader had been reading Burroughs' mind, his radio earpiece burst into life. "Charlie 1 to the visual. Permission." "There's no change at the front aspect," Burroughs said into his coat lapel. "Permission to speak granted." "Charlie 1 to the whole team. Update from the Delta team that the target is still in the restaurant, having a meal. Charlie 1 to Tango 1. Acknowledge the last, and a situation report from you when pos." Silence. "Charlie 1 to Tango 1. Acknowledge." Silence again. "Visual to Charlie 1, Burroughs butted in. "Maybe you're parked too far away, and they aren't picking you up. I'll try, we're only 100 meters away." Charlie 1 agreed and Burrows tried raising the CME team Tango 1, but received no reply. Something was wrong. Burrows suggested to Charlie 1 that, as they were the nearest, he would slip out of the van and do a walk past at the rear to see what was going on. It was a ground floor flat. The property had been converted into several apartments. It had a rear yard accessed from a secluded alley, and intelligence checks reported that the other flats in the building were currently occupied. They were summer lets. Southport, for all its charm, wasn't the place to hold down for the winter. Charlie 1 told Burrows to go ahead. So he asked Brian to stay vigilant whilst he slid out of the side door to the van, the one facing away from the target premises. Glad to be out of the van, Burrows stretched his large frame as he stood up straight. He was in his 50s and getting too old for cramped ops vans, he thought. Though he kept himself in shape, sitting in ops vans had always been a back killer. As soon as he was away and heading towards the end of the block, he checked that his own visual communications were working okay. Brian, speaking as the visual, said he was loud and clear. The weak street lighting was low and helped Burrows stay unobtrusive as he kept to the shadows, pulling up the collar of his leather jacket as he walked. Once he turned the corner at the end of the row, he felt relief at being out of sight, and quickly made his way down the unlit back alley. He counted the rear gates until he was sure the next one was the target address. The gate was open, and he waited a couple of meters away, catching his breath as he listened intently. Nothing. He checked his watch. It was now 11. 15 minutes since the Tango team announced their arrival at the rear. Setting his radio to whisper mode, which amplifies quiet speech, he tried to raise them again. No reply. Something was very wrong. There was no way they wouldn't be able to hear him from this distance. As stealthily as he could, Burrows tiptoed to the edge of the gate and slowly peered around its jamb. It took a moment in the subdued light for his eyes to adjust. It was even darker than in the alleyway. At least the passage had some ambient light at each end of it. He took a step in as his vision attuned. Then he saw them.